Hello, and thank you for attending this evening. My name is Nell Clausen, and I am the Voter Services Chair of the local league of the League of Women Voters, US, a national nonpartisan nonprofit organization whose purpose is to promote the informed and active participation of citizens in government. We welcome both men and women. I want to underscore the primary tenet of our organization, nonpartisanship. In the 102 years since we were established, we have never endorsed or opposed a candidate or political party at any level of government. We are ardent about positions, not people. It's sometimes confusing, however, because after a formal study process, we will and have taken positions on issues. We are truly grateful and impressed by those of you who are participating in tonight's forum, to the candidates for your willingness and courage to run for office, to the audience for your involvement in the democratic process, and to the local league members who expend a great deal of time and energy to make these forums fair and informative. I hope you enjoyed the slideshow with important information about the league and upcoming forums this fall. If you missed it, please note it will run again at the end of the forum for about 5 minutes. With that, I'd like to introduce Norma Turner, the moderator this evening. Norma has not moderated many forums for the league, and we truly appreciate her volunteering to do this one for us this evening. Norma?
Thank you, Nell. And I also want to give a special thanks for Rebecca Miller because she created the PowerPoint for us. I want to welcome our 4 candidates. I was telling them it's nice to put a face to the signs that we're seeing. And thank you all 4 of you for running. It's not an easy thing to do. So my name is Norma Turner. I'm the moderator for this Zoom forum. The press release for this forum invited the public to send us questions. Fortunately, several citizens took us up on that. And so all the questions that will be asked tonight have come directly from the voters in the community. Unfortunately, we won't be able to host any live questions, but I'm sure if someone has something they want to ask any of the candidates, they can find you through your website or some other way. So the ongoing COVID has forced us to have this Zoom, but we are hoping somewhere in the future we can go back to live forums, but we're really pleased to have the opportunity to do this by Zoom. So now I'd like to just take a minute and turn it over to Bonnie Blesh so that so she can show you what the timer mechanism is going to look like for tonight's meeting. So Bonnie, you're on.
Thank you, Norma. I'm Bonnie Bliss-Banish, your timer for tonight. And I'm going to show you a little sample of what the timer is going to look like. As each candidate starts to answer, there will be a countdown timer, and Sarah will have it pinned so you'll be able to see it as candidates speak. When each person starts to answer a question, the timer will begin to count down. The background turns yellow when there are 15 seconds left, and then it will turn red and say stop when the time has finished. Candidates are welcome to finish their sentence and then please stop. And candidates don't need to use all their time if they do not wish to. As soon as they have finished, then the screen will switch back to timer. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. So tonight, this is truly unique in the nation because as probably most of you know that Clallam County is the only place in the nation that elects their director of community development. In all other places, that position is appointed. A very brief history of how that came to be was in 1976, Clallam County became a charter county voted on by the public. And then in 2002, the voters approved an amendment to that charter to have the DCD, instead of being an appointed position, to be elected. And the first elected DCD director took over in January, was elected November 2003. A charter county simply means that we can change our local governance. And this was one of the changes we made. Of the 39 Washington counties, only 7 are charter counties. So tonight we look at 4 candidates who are would like to be the 5th director of the DCD department. I'm going to read a very brief description of this job, and it comes directly out of the charter. And if anybody wants to know more about the charter, just go on the county website and click, and the whole charter will pop up for you. Anyway, the charter defines this job as someone who administers, enforces, and advises the county commissioners on all laws except health with respect to the environment, natural resources, and land and shoreline development. It involves zoning, land divisions, environmental policy, building and fire codes, forest management, mining, agriculture, watershed planning, and floodplains. They also prepare and present to the county commissioners for consideration of adoption by ordinance, comprehensive or other plans and use or development regulations for the use and physical development of the county. So you can see this office has an enormous responsibility. It's nonpartisan. And so now it's my pleasure to introduce our 4 candidates. And we're going to start, we will have 2 rounds. The first, each candidate will be given 1 minute to tell us what their background is, their education and experience, what experience they bring to this office. Then we'll come back around to the same lineup, and they'll have 2 minutes to tell us what their goals are for running if they become elected and become the DCD director. So we're going to call on the candidates as they are listed on your ballot. So the first person who will have 1 minute to give their background resume will be Kevin Russell. So Kevin, you're on.
Thank you, Norma, and thank you to the league. My name is Kevin Russell. I'm a resident here of Clallam County. I've been a landowner and investor since 1997. I've been a builder since 2003. And I have more building experience that comes from another area. I've been a business owner here since 2003. My background also includes, I was a corporate executive down in Southern California, and I'm retired from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. So my background is very diverse, and I think it fits well with the position of DCD. I have experience in planning as I've developed and planned neighborhoods, including the first low impact development neighborhood in Clallam County. I have experience in building, of course. For the code enforcement end of it, I have quite a bit of experience from my law enforcement time. And in management, I have quite a bit of management and fiscal responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And next, I will be Cherie Kidd. And so Cherie, you have 1 minute to give us your background. You're muted, Cherie.
Thank you. I was born and raised here in Port Angeles, as were my parents. I'm 3rd generation of people who've served our community. Leadership matters, and my experience matters. I have 16 years of public service. I served on the Port Angeles Planning Commission. I served as chair, and that deals exclusively with land issues, zoning issues. I spent 12 years on the Port Angeles City Council, serving as mayor and deputy mayor. And I work with other elected officials and organizations through cooperation and collaboration. This is a job for a community leader. I have been through the comprehensive plan. I've worked with governments and agencies. I have management experience from corporate experience and running my own business. I'm a successful business owner. I have the experience, the background, and accomplishments in Port Angeles to be a leader in the Department of Community Development. Thank you.
Thank you, Cherie. And so next, we'll hear from Jesse Major, your background and your resume, please.
All right, so I was raised in Port Angeles. I graduated from Port Angeles High School and Peninsula College. And then I went to Pacific Lutheran University in Tacoma, where I graduated with a bachelor's degree in journalism. From there, I entered the news industry. I accepted a position as a reporter with the Peninsula Daily News, where my primary beat was covering county government. It was there that I developed a strong understanding of how our county government functions and developed strong working relationships with many of our local, state, and federal officials. Just before COVID, I accepted a position as a code enforcement officer in the Department of Community Development. I am the only candidate who has any recent experience in this department. Unfortunately, due to how staff were being treated at the time, the entire code enforcement division left. So now I work in the public records office, where I work to ensure that our county complies with the Public Records Act. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. And then Bruce, you have 1 minute for your background and your resume, please. And you're muted. There you are. Okay.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. My name's Bruce Emery. I am running for the DCD director position. I have lived in Clallam County for over 30 years. I have a BA in geography with emphasis in resource management. I also have an MBA specializing in project management. I have 14 years experience with the Department of Community Development and Planning. During that time, I accomplished all levels of land use and environmental permitting. I have written land use policy and regulation. I have worked with the elected Board of County Commissioners, the Planning Commission, and other advisory groups. I have trained and supervised current Planning Division staff. I was the recipient of the Clallam County Excellence in Service Award for 2006. In short, I am familiar with all of the work the director will oversee. I also have 15 years as a project manager in the private sector, giving me extensive knowledge not only of the workings of the department, but also its impact on the community. Thank you.
Thank you. The second round will go in the same order. You will have 2 minutes to answer this time. And it's more about the job that you'd like to get done once you're elected. So how do you intend to deal with the key issues confronting your area of responsibility? And what's the primary goal that you hope to accomplish in your first year in office? So we'll go in the same order this time. So Kevin, you're up again, 2 minutes.
Okay, so if I'm fortunate enough to be elected, the first thing that I'd like to do is bring back a great open communication with our Board of Commissioners. That would be the start. The second thing is to learn from the community. What is it that the community wants to see? Well, the comprehensive plan is upgraded. That's very important because the comp plan is going to be what drives us for the next 8 years, and that would start in 2025. There are so many things that we have to be thankful for in this community. And I would love to see the fact that we are such a diverse community. Let us come together. Let us keep this great community and culture in the rural way it's been. However, addressing the issues that we have right now with housing and with the homeless issue and code enforcement, helping to keep our neighbors and our neighborhoods safe. I think that's very important. There's been a lot of issues going on within the DCD and the commissioners, and I think there's been a lot of missed opportunities that the commissioners have wanted to accomplish, and it's time to get back together and have that spirit of cooperation. In addition to that, I'd like to get in. I've talked to the people in planning. I've talked to the people in building. I've been working with them for years. I worked with Bruce when he was a planner, and asked them, what do you need? What do you want to help make customer service even better? Customer service should be key. Got a lot of background in business. I've got a lot of experience in that. So I'm looking forward to bringing that to the department and just getting us back to center and working together as a community. We need to do that, especially in these diverse times. So I look forward to bringing us all together. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. And next, Cherie Kidd will have 2 minutes to answer the same question. Do you want me to repeat the question, Cherie?
Please.
Okay. How do you intend to deal with the key issues confronting your area's responsibility? And what is the primary goal that you hope to accomplish in the first year in office? So you'll have 2 minutes for that answer.
Thank you. Day one, I will bring leadership and competence to this office. I have an excellent working collaborative relationship with all the county commissioners. I've sat on boards and commissions with all of them for years, so I don't have to try to establish relationships. I have good relationships, so that'll start off, and that's very important. We need to look at the issues in the community. affordable housing is it we have a crisis in housing crisis right now, and there are government regulations that are obstacles to houses being built. So we need to look for options. If people can't afford stick-built homes, what are our other options? I need to get out in the community. One thing I'm known for and have always been known for is my public outreach. So I'll be getting out I'll be a very visible DCD. I'll be out in the community and have sessions where I can talk with the public because I really need public input. And so I really think it's important when you walk into the Department of Planning, you need a permit, and excellence in customer service. We need to tell you when you have a plan for a home or a business or something to be built, not how it can't be done, but how it can be done. So I'm really going to bring my background of excellence in customer service, leadership in the community. This is a leadership position, not a staff position, and relationships. So and code enforcement is important. If we have the policies in place for code enforcement, we just need to put some primary effort into it. And I plan on doing that. There's a lot we can do. It's our community, and I'm here to make it the best it can be. Thank you.
Thank you. And so Jesse, you're up next. Do you want me to repeat the question?
I've got it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, you have 2 minutes.
All right. So we've had a couple of these forums now, and I'm still unaware of some of the specific policies my opponents would like to implement. So I would actually like to challenge them tonight to share some specific policies that they intend to implement if elected, so that our voters can make an informed decision in the coming weeks. Here's what I would like to do. And I just put these ideas on my Facebook page, Jesse Major for DCD, if you want to check them out again. First, I would like to decriminalize poverty. It sounds crazy, but in Collin County, it is criminal, like go to jail criminal, to live in a single tiny house on wheels, RV, or trailer on private property, even if it is hooked up to septic and no one is causing any problems. This is wrong, and enforcement of this provision leads directly to homelessness. Second, I'd like to streamline permitting for small home-based businesses. Many home-based businesses require a conditional use permit that costs more than $2,500 and requires an onerous permitting process involving a hearing examiner. We can support local businesses and reduce costs significantly by making these permits approved by the county and then appealable to the hearing examiner. Other communities have done this, we can too. Third, I'd like to support farmers by updating our code. We currently have a 2-sentence definition for agriculture that is so vague that it is unclear what is and isn't allowed. We should adopt code similar to Jefferson County that would make it clear that we support agriculture in Collin County. Fourth, I'd like to expand our catalog of pre-approved building plans. We already have pre-approved plans for a 392 square foot house. We should follow the city of Port Angeles' lead and expand on this by offering plans for a modest single family residence with 2 and 3 bedroom options. Last, I'd like to mention, you will likely hear a lot about experience tonight. I've been endorsed by Collin County Sheriff Bill Benedict, and I am honored that he believes that I have the knowledge and experience necessary to lead this department. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. And so Bruce, and you're up for the same question. Do I read the question again?
That won't be necessary.
Okay.
So if fortunate enough to be elected DCD director, I would also start by establishing a collaborative and supportive relationship between the department and the elected Board of County Commissioners. The authority to adopt policy and regulation rests exclusively with the board, but it is the Department of Community Development that is responsible for research and development of alternatives so the board can make a well-informed decision on land use policy and regulation promulgation. I would also enhance the functioning of the department in customer service, code enforcement, consistent application of the regulations, and professional development of departmental staff. Regarding the latter, I do know full well that it is the staff that is the best asset of the department, and working to develop them professionally, providing the necessary support and making it a livable, happy place to work is one good way to increase efficiency in the department. I would also strengthen the dialogue and collaboration with civic groups, builders, and other stakeholders. In that, I would want to foster broader communication and involvement on regulatory matters. That only produces better outcomes. Having a community that is engaged and informed is far better than the alternative. I would work with other agencies to help resolve our affordable housing crisis. I do believe the department has a role in this effort. I would work to manage the process of the comprehensive plan update required by 2025 under the Growth Management Act. In that, I would specifically like to see resiliency in our critical areas protections, that there is adequate land base for industrial and commercial land uses to strengthen development of family wage jobs and needed infrastructure, to foster real solutions to help resolve the current housing affordability crisis, and to ensure the protections that maintain our resource lands and rural character that make Clallam County one of the best places to live.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And now we're going to move on to those questions that we pulled together from. Some of them will be combinations of several questions together. We have time for 7. If we have extra time, we'll go on to an 8th question. And this is a format where you'll have 90 seconds to answer, and we'll do it in a rotating manner. So the first question will be Cherie Kidd, followed by Jesse Major, then followed by Bruce, and then Kevin. So the first question is the current job description that's listed in the charter regarding both your duties and your authority sufficient, or does it need to be expanded or clarified? And if so, how? So Cherie, you're up for 90 seconds.
Yes, I believe it is sufficient, and it just takes focus, it takes experience, and it takes the cooperation and collaboration with the county commissioners. The DCD was set up to advise the county commissioners, not be above them or below them, but to advise them and work together. When there's lack of communication, it affects public outcome and it's inefficient for our local government. So the policies and the charters set up properly if you focus and work collaboratively. I think that's important. Like code enforcement. Code enforcement is in the charter, and policies are in place. We need to implement those policies. We need an attitude of excellence in the Department of Communications and Community Development, so that when people come in for permitting, everything's in place. We have a great staff, but we need staff development. But I'm here as it's the director of this department, is a leader in our community. The charter is set up to work properly, and if you are focused, if you have the experience, if you work through cooperation, collaboration, and you focus on getting things done, it'll work. It'll run like clockwork. It'll get things done. People will be happy. There'll be no scandals in the paper, and we'll all get along. And that's the purpose of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And so next will be Jesse. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thank you.
Okay.
So
90 seconds.
Okay, so the current job description in the charter, I think, is pretty clear, and the voters have 3 times now decided that they want to keep this as an elected position that is separate from the Board of County Commissioners. So under our charter, while there needs to be a strong relationship between the Department of Community Development and the Board of Commissioners, they are 2 separate entities, and they are both accountable to the people. We've ran into some difficulties where there have been conflicts between the 2, but that's more of an issue as to who is presently in office. I already have strong working relationships with the Board of Commissioners, and I foresee being able to actually get things done. Where we do run into some inconsistencies is actually under Title 26 of Clallam County Code. It says that DCD is accountable to the Board of Commissioners, which is the opposite of what our charter says. So that is something that could change. But I think that the charter is pretty clear and the definition is sufficient.
Thank you. Okay, and so next we have Bruce. Do you want me to repeat the question?
That won't be necessary.
Okay,
I think likewise that the charter is sufficiently worded. And in fact, it's broadly worded to reflect kind of the scope and range of the position. It's a technical position and it requires a lot of expertise to carry out and administer appropriately. I do recognize that the voters of Clallam County have spoken many times saying they want control. They want the position to be accountable to them, which is fine. And I agree with that. There's no argument here. But the job still has to fulfill its role to assist in the research development and the technical side of developing sound land use policy and regulation. That's not an easy task. That takes someone with some experience doing that work. That's one reason I decided to run is I do have that experience actually working on regulation and policy development. And in addition, all the other aspects of the department, working with the building division on project reviews and administering all levels of land use planning codes. To me, there's no reason to revisit the wording in the charter. And in a way, having it broadly worded like that makes a lot of sense because ultimately it fulfills the purpose of serving the public use, welfare, and interest.
thank you. And now Kevin Russell, you're up next. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, ma'am.
Okay,
So the title is Director of Community Development. What does that mean? It means you're working with our community, and that should be our paramount interest. It is sufficient the way it's written in the charter. And I think it's very important to establish, again, that working relationship with the Board of Commissioners because they're the ones that make the final decision. They're the arbiters. And I would enjoy nothing more than seeing them get stuff accomplished they've been wanting to do. So the charter has it right. And I think we go forward with the way it is. What I bring to that is Bruce states he has experience working in the department. He absolutely does. He's a fine young man. Some of those codes and some of those laws that the Director of Community Development has to work with that affect the Board of Commissioners and also affect the citizens start in a place called Olympia. For the last 18 years, I've been down working with members of the House, members of the Senate, with the Building Association, where I was chairman of the board of the 2018 session for the BIAW, where we work with the codes before they come out. So I've got a lot of experience seeing things that don't even make it into the department and how we stop things or bring things in that are good. So I look forward to using that. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, now we're on to the second question, and this round will be starting with Jesse Major. So there were several questions submitted dealing with affordable housing, such as, do you support pre-approved building plans to help address the housing shortage? And what policies and requirements for builders could be revised to make housing more affordable? So Jesse, you are on for 90 seconds.
Sure. So, yes, as I mentioned earlier, I do support having pre-approved building plans. I think it just makes sense. It will lower the cost and make it easier for people who are willing to have a modest home that is fairly simple. What we need to do is we need to work with the state to find ways to incentivize affordable and multifamily housing. The state actually does have a program for property tax relief for multifamily housing. And unfortunately, the state decided that counties with fewer than, I think it was 170,000 people are not eligible. So really this tax incentive only applies along the I-5 corridor. We need to look for solutions like that and advocate for incentives to decrease costs. And we need to look at potentials for lowering impact fees where possible and partnering to get these projects done. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and so next we have Bruce. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Please do.
Okay. There are so, these are questions dealing with affordable housing. Do you support pre-approved building plans to help address the housing shortage? And also, what policies and requirements for builders are currently in place but need to be revised to make housing more affordable? Okay, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. First of all, pre-approved house plans, I think, do make sense. And that's one of the things that the current DCD director did that I really do appreciate. There's some conflict, obviously, with those who make their living doing plans. But in this case, it serves a very specific purpose in a very specific niche. And it is for affordable housing. And we have to be thinking in those ways outside of the box to get that addressed. As far as policies that are in place that are, kind of creating a challenge to affordable housing, there's a lot of regulation right now, all of which is well-intended, but some of which is getting to the point where it's exacting a toll without a whole lot of return on investment. I'm speaking primarily to the energy code, for example. And I say that with a strong caveat. I do not support anything that would increase greenhouse gases or exacerbate the problem with global warming. But when you consider the amount of costs of some of the changes, especially theoretically going to be coming up in the next year, in the next cycle, these things are going to add thousands of dollars to the cost of construction with very little in the way of actual energy savings. And that is of concern.
Thank you. Okay, and next, Kevin Russell, you're up. Do you want me to repeat the question? You're muted, Kevin.
Sorry.
Do you want
No,
me to-
thank you, Norma. I appreciate
Okay.
it.
You have 90 seconds.
Okay, on the plans, one consideration that has not been given is the pre-approved housing plans, albeit well-intentioned. What do they save from a builder standpoint? They save the cost of a designer, a local designer who earns their living by designing plans. That small fraction, that's what it saves. What does it possibly do? It opens the county up to lawsuits. If something happens, and we all know how society loves to sue within that house. Coming from California, when I was working in construction down there, I had a friend that was an architect and a designer. He got sued by UPS because a UPS delivery guy tripped on the curb for a house he built in Palm Springs. So one concern. What policies or requirements need to be revised? We can't fix what needs to be revised. As Bruce mentioned, the WESAC, the Washington State Energy Code, stormwater management. There's a plethora of rules that we try so hard at the state, again, to defeat before they get put here. We always want to be very aware of our environment. We want to protect our environment as best we can, but we also don't want to price people out, and that's where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now Cherie, you're up for this question. Do you want me to repeat the question? You're muted, Cherie.
Sure.
You want me to repeat it?
Go ahead.
Okay. Do you support pre-approved building plans to help address the housing shortage? And what policies and requirements for builders could be revised to perhaps make housing more affordable? So you have 90 seconds.
I do appreciate and support pre-approved building plans. In fact, at the county, we have a pre-approved building plan for an ADU that I think is is really worth looking at. We have to think outside of the box for affordable housing. What are the issues preventing duplexes, triplexes, apartments being built? We need more multifamily housing. So let's also look at zoning, where areas where we can increase multifamily housing. What's happening is we are given so many regulations. We have the International Building Code. Every 3 years, it comes down, but it doesn't support building in Clallam County. It may help them in the King County, but it adds thousands of dollars. We have stormwater costs in the city of Port Angeles that adds thousands of dollars to the city and the UGAs that prevents building. We have so many energy codes now that add thousands and thousands of dollars. We have prevailing wage. We have permitting costs. So we have to look at what we can control. And frankly, we have to advocate to slow down some of the increasing, spiraling out of control regulations that are adding so much to our building costs. Thank you.
Thank you. So now on to question number 3. And with number 3, Bruce, you will be the first one to answer. The third question is sort of more of a little bit about affordable housing, then we'll move on to other issues. One idea for creating more affordable housing is for the county to pay the cost of current ecologically requirements in return for the builders agreeing to keep the rent affordable for 20 years. What do you think of this idea? And do you have some other, quote, out of the box ideas? You have 90 seconds.
Well, I think if a funding source can be secured, why not? I mean, again, I advocate thinking outside of the box on this issue because I think that's what it's going to take to help resolve it. And there are other things, though, that DCD can do to help assist in this effort. One of the things under the Growth Management Act is the land's capacity analysis that's required to be done as part of the comprehensive plan update. And as far as I can tell, there's scarce land available right now for adequate industrial land, commercial land, and even residential. So as part of the update, we'll be looking at that and trying to locate sizable areas that can attract the kind of businesses that would provide family wage jobs for the community. It would be done so under the auspice of the GMA, which also ensures that rural areas be protected and our resource lands be protected and our critical areas be protected. I believe all of those can be accomplished at the same time. It's also important to note that some of the changing economic conditions may be making it more reasonable to see large-scale multifamily developments occur. With the raising interest rates, it makes more sense to do a project like that provides a long-term yield versus one where you're expecting a hot market to provide a quick turnaround on a home sale. So I think those things are going to make some positive changes in the years to come.
Thank you. Okay, and so next is Kevin. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thank you, Norma.
Okay.
So that is a great idea. That's anything that would create an opportunity for a builder or an owner builder, somebody to build housing that we know becomes long-term rental. I think that may be, Norma, if I understood the question correctly, that there would be a requirement that the housing would be offered.
Yes, the builder would agree to keep it affordable for 20 years.
So some of the solutions I pointed out are, what are the opportunities we have for sales tax breaks? What are the opportunities we have for federal tax breaks? What are the opportunities we have for property tax breaks? We do need to get creative. With the land's capacity analysis, and our EDC is doing a tremendous job of drawing people in with interest to come here. We have to find ways to get balance. The most important thing, though, is to find out from the community, from those of you in the community, what do you want? As I'm traveling out and talking to people, I'm hearing a very diverse range of what people want. We need to come together and see what is best for all of us collectively. We need to protect our natural resources. We need to protect our communities. We need to be safe again. So we need to come together as a community and work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and so now let's see, Cherie, you're next. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Okay. So one idea for creating more affordable housing units is for the county to pay the cost of current ecological requirements in return for the builder agreeing to keep the rent affordable for 20 years. What do you think of this idea? And do you have some other ideas you would consider that are out of the box? You have
Well,
90 seconds.
thank you. That's a great idea. We have to look at funding source. And in fact, we have to look at funding sources for a lot of options. Long term, we need to try to attract investors to come in and make a more modest return on their investment, 5 to 10% instead of larger returns. We need to look at funding sources to create long-term rentals. We need that. We need more multifamily housing. Again, duplexes, triplexes, apartments. We need to look at zoning areas where we can increase density. And yes, we need to look at funding and opportunities. We have the opportunity fund available. We need to find out what other funds people can invest in Port Angeles long-term for affordable housing. But we have to think way out of the box, not just stick build affordable housing. We need to look at mobile homes. We need to look at manufactured homes. We have a lot of options that we need to discuss that are affordable housing, and any funding that's available, that's responsibility of the Department of Community Development. Let's look at options to help our community build affordable housing. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and Jesse, the same question. Do you want the question repeated?
No, thank you.
Okay, you have 90 seconds.
All right. So yeah, anything we can do to reduce the costs associated with developing long-term rentals, I'm all for it. The challenge with this is, how do we pay for it? The state does keep finding funding sources for affordable housing. That's usually in the form of more taxes. And we just did pass, the county commissioners just did pass an affordable housing tax that will start by bringing in 1.5 million a year to go towards additional construction of affordable housing. What's unfortunate is oftentimes it seems with these funding sources that they're for very specific purposes, and that doesn't necessarily mean we can use those dollars in the way that makes the most sense. So I think it's an excellent idea. I think finding the funding would be a challenge. But again, anything we can do to reduce the costs, I'm all for. And part of that too is DCD needs to work on infrastructure. We have the zoning, particularly in urban growth areas, for multifamily housing. But in general, it's just not occurring. We need to look at our infrastructure and where possible, expand. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the fourth question, Kevin, you'll be the first one to answer. The question is that Port Angeles recently passed a climate change resiliency plan. Please give your ideas on why or why not Clallam County should create and pass a similar plan in the near future. And you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. My understanding is that is before the city council, their resiliency plan. So climate change, yes, I think we all are aware that that climate change is occurring. And through regulation, more and more, we are dealing with climate change. I started Built Green of Clallam County, and I started Built Green of Washington. So I've been involved with the addressing of climate for a long time. We've introduced good, sound building practices that take into consideration the climate. And how do we do that? Do I think Clallam County needs to introduce their own plan? No. I think we need to still be good stewards of the property, of the land. We need to be aware of what we can do to protect our watersheds, our air, all of it, our forests. We have a great resource in our forests. But one size does not fit all. We have to remember that. Regulations from other areas don't fit where we live in Clallam County. We're over-regulated now because of the I-5 corridor. I wish there was some way we could regulate ourselves and we could govern ourselves. But I think we leave it to the community to use good common sense, logic, and reason to protect our natural resources and our land to the best of our ability without being governed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and so Cherie, you're next. Do you want the question repeated?
Please.
Okay. Port Angeles recently passed a climate change resiliency plan. Please give your ideas on why or why not Clallam County should create and pass a similar plan in the near future. And you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. I haven't read it thoroughly. We have to deal with climate change. We have to address it. We have to plan for it. We have to build for it. And we have to adjust our community appropriately. But we had just talked about all the regulations that are piling on the building code. And we've just been asked to come up with ideas for affordable housing. Now we're being asked to add additional regulations that are going to, maybe, I don't know how expensive they will be. So I would study this, and I would talk to the community development of Forks and Squim, and I would talk to our public, our citizens, to see where Clallam County needs to move in this direction. We have to find common areas that work for us. Yes, we have to address climate change. We're in a housing crisis. What steps are we going to take that are going to help us with affordable housing? But what I don't understand, the cost of the climate change resiliency will be to the homeowner, to the home builder, someone who wants to build apartments, triplexes, condos. I don't understand the housing cost, and we must understand the cost before we proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Jesse, you're up next. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thank you.
Okay, you have 90 seconds.
Yeah, so I would need to look into the climate change resiliency plan more. But in general, yeah, the Department of Community Development does have a responsibility to protect our natural resources. And as we're planning, we need to take into consideration the impacts of climate change. DCD needs to protect our critical areas and manage development so that we need to take into consideration the changes that we will be seeing over the years, so that property is protected and we don't run into problems in the future. But again, I need to look into what the city has adopted a little more before I can give a more specific answer on. But I'd be happy to follow up with whoever asked the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Bruce, you're up next. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thank you.
Okay, you have 90 seconds.
I think this is a good question, and it's one that makes a person think pretty heavily. I do believe that one of the key things that we need to do, we have a responsibility to do, certainly under the growth management update to the comprehensive plan, our critical areas ordinance needs to be reviewed against best available science. And I'm interested in what the scientific literature has to say about the adequacy of stream buffers, wetland buffers, and similar protection measures in the context of climate change. They have to be resilient and they have to be adequate in order to provide the protection. I mean, our environment is our primary infrastructure. That's all there is to it. There's an economic necessity as well as a moral necessity to do this. I also think the capital facilities plans need to be examined. Certainly our water sources could potentially be adversely affected by climate change. If there's changes in precipitation and aquifer recharge, then we have to know what's likely to occur and what safeguards need to be taken to ensure that we have public facilities and services available to serve us well into the future. Even though I may have mentioned in sort of a negative light the energy code, that is certainly one area where construction is doing its share.
Thank you. So the next question, Cherie Kidd will be the first one to answer. What do you see as the strengths, excuse me, what do you see as the strengths and weaknesses in the current comprehensive plan? So Cherie, you have 90 seconds. You're muted, Cherie. There you go. Okay.
Okay, the comprehensive plan, when it needs to be updated, but doesn't need to be totally redone. We need to look at the current comprehensive plan according to our affordable housing crisis, according to our climate change. So the comprehensive plan, we need to look at every area. And frankly, I need to talk with the community about this. The director of community development needs public input in before we make any changes to comprehensive plan. Public input is key, and I'm delighted that we have the opportunity, and I've been part of the comprehensive plan update in the past, and I'm looking forward to it in the future, but we need to take into climate change. We need to take into accountability affordable housing. We need to look at our critical areas infrastructure, and we need to find out a plan for the next 10 years. So where are we going? How are we getting there? How are our needs changing? It's not through great leaps with the comprehensive plan. It's incremental, and I will be out in the community and talking with people before we actually make changes or suggest changes. This is a community project to update our comprehensive plan. It's our future vision. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and so next, Jesse, you're up. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thank you.
All right.
So, yeah, so when you look at our comprehensive plan, we are dealing with many of the same issues that our comp plan is trying to address. It discusses the need for affordable housing, how agriculture is changing, and the county needs to support that. But things have also changed. For example, we need to take into consideration climate change, our increasing populations, infrastructure. More and more people are going to be driving electric cars. Is that something that we should take into consideration when we're talking about infrastructure? But most importantly, as we go through the comp plan process in the next couple years, we need public input. Unfortunately, this hasn't happened in the past. During the last update, which actually occurred 2 years late, we got sued and lost because we did not have adequate public participation, and we just were checking the boxes to say we did it. I would like to see us have robust public participation so that we get a plan that addresses the challenges that we're facing and gives us a good roadmap as we move forward.
Thank you. And so next we have Bruce. Do you want me to repeat the question?
That won't be oops.
Oh, okay, you have 90 seconds.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for the question. It's pretty in-depth. As far as public participation, I was involved in the original planning efforts that the county did with the origin of the Growth Management Act, including the four regional sub-area plan developments, and then the consolidation in the county-wide plan. I thought that was a great success. We did have some challenges, obviously, but now that we understand kind of what the bright lines in the sand are in terms of what the Growth Hearings Board say about comprehensive plans, we certainly know a lot more about what needs to be done. I think there are some strengths with the current plan. It achieves what it needs to in terms of protection of rural character, resource lands, and how we manage our urban growth areas and city boundaries. I do think that economic development is a little bit neglected and traditionally has been. I do think that hungry people make poor environmental decisions. So I think it's important that we resolve that and help strengthen the economic base of our county. Affordable housing also needs to be updated to reflect current conditions and current solutions. Capital facilities planning, including the extension of urban services throughout the unincorporated urban growth areas, would go a long way to achieve this.
Thank you. And so Kevin, the same question. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please, Norma.
Okay. What do you see as the strengths and the weaknesses in the current comprehensive plan?
Thank you.
You have 90 seconds.
Okay, well, the plan, as written, serves as a guide for directing local land use policy and decision-making. As stated, it is countywide and has 4 regional areas. Nothing says that we have to change it unless it's needed or unless the public wants to change. So yeah, there are many things that we have to address. They come up constantly in these forums, the same thing. What are we going to do to address our homelessness or housing affordability, which leads to homelessness? How can we do that? How does the comprehensive plan change? Also, the expansion of some of our areas for industrial growth, for business growth, that type of thing. Multifamily, another one. We have to look at that, but I'm going to sound like a broken record. We need to have public input. It's so very important that we do what is necessary to get the public engaged, because they're the ones that are determining where we're going to go in the future. Once we get that, the Planning Commission and the commissioners take that information, put it together, and the commissioners will adopt a new comprehensive plan, amend it, change it, keep it the way it is. What does the public want? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the next question, Jesse, you'll be first up. And there's been some mention of this earlier in the discussion. What is the role of code enforcement? It's one thing to have things on the books about how things should be done, but if they're not enforced, it doesn't mean much. So we'd like to hear your views on the importance of code enforcement. So Jesse, you're first up with 90 seconds.
All right, so I was actually a code enforcement officer, so I know the challenges we're facing firsthand. The role of code enforcement is, first, we need to enforce the codes that directly affect the health and safety of the community and the people who live on those properties. That means setting priorities. Our code enforcement should be going after the properties that present an imminent health and safety risk, not only to the community, but to the people living there. We have sprawling encampments where there's 20 or more RVs, no septic, no power, tons of drugs. This isn't good for anyone. Those need to be our priority as far as enforcement goes, because those present the biggest safety risks in our community. And to go after those, we need to work with the other departments. We need to work with the sheriff's office, the health department, the board of commissioners, and the prosecutor's office. Those types of conditions, just we cannot have them continue. That's what I would like to see.
Thank you. So Bruce, you're up next. Do you want me to repeat the question?
That won't be necessary.
All right, you have 90 seconds.
All right, thank you for this good question. I do believe that code enforcement, its role is necessary if for no other reason than it's part and parcel with the equal protection under the law. Without that, we're only regulating honest people, and it's unfair. So it is essential. I do believe it should be coordinated with the sheriff's office and other regulatory interests. Oftentimes when you go out to some of these locations, there's more than just one issue. We do know that we know what works. Under Rich Sill's oversight about 15 years ago, junk vehicles were the big issue, and we had adopted a junk vehicle ordinance. And he put together a program, I believe they call it POP, problem-oriented policing. He had about 10 volunteers, ex-police officers, sheriff's deputies, that would go out with him to these communities. And rather than just knock on one door and say, you've got a problem, you've got to fix it, and create an adversarial relationship, he would go out there and they would say, yeah, you got an issue here, but we've got someone who will take that whole vehicle and pay you cash for it. And oh, by the way, he'll use that, you can use that cash. I've got another guy who'll go clean up that pile of trash over there. And they made a big difference. They got rid of over 900 junk vehicles in less than 5 years. And that's the kind of program I'd like to see re-implemented.
Thank you. And so next we have Kevin Russell. Do you want me to repeat the question?
No, thank you.
Okay, you have 90 seconds.
At the risk of sounding not negative in that, Jesse Major touts that he's the candidate with recent code enforcement experience. He does have a recent code enforcement experience, maybe a year and a half. I have years of law enforcement experience, true on the street, working with county code enforcement officers and dealing with really bad people. So if anyone is here that can present as a candidate that understands it, I certainly have the most depth and breadth experience. I've used code enforcement to my advantage to close down drug labs, to arrest murder suspects. I can go on and on and on. So I certainly have that experience. The program Bruce talks about with Rich Sill, we've had the same conversation, Rich. I remember when Rich was in code enforcement, we talked at length about it. When I was asked to run for this position, Rich and I had a very long conversation, and it's a great program that would be really good to bring back. I'd like to correct Bruce on one thing. They're not ex-police officers in law enforcement, they're retired. There's a negative connotation to being ex. I am retired, I have retired credentials. So we have an opportunity here. It's looking for cooperation first, enforcement second. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Cherie, the same question. Do you want me to repeat the question? Okay,
No, thank you.
you have 90 seconds.
Code enforcement is important and it's a responsibility. It's one component of the Office of Director of Community Development. It's one important component. And this is where my collaborative relationships with the county commissioners, with the sheriff, as elected official to elected official over 12 years will really benefit. I would consider code enforcement a priority. I would work with the sheriff's department, the health department, the prosecutor's department, but I have a respectful approach. My approach is kind of like the frog in the pot, where you talk nice to the frog and it's warm water, and you go in. It's an education and cooperation approach, because if we educate and cooperate with the landowners, we want cooperation. But little by little, you turn up the heat. We have the policies in place for code enforcement. In fact, our chapter 20.04 of our county charter says it's the intent of Clallam County to pursue code compliance actively and vigorously to protect health and safety and environment. I will be active and vigorously enforcing code enforcement respectfully, cooperatively, using education, but getting it done.
Thank you. Okay, for the next question, Bruce, you'll be up first. So the latest County Charter Review Commission recommended the Board of County Commissioners and the DCD meet together to determine the authorities to be exercised between the two that are not delegated outright by an RCW or the charter. Do you believe that this has been satisfactorily accomplished? And if not, then what is your plan to accomplish it during your term? So you have 90 seconds. That's a very long, wordy question. So if you want me to repeat it, I will.
No, I think I understand the question, and thank you. And first of all, Kevin, you're right. I apologize. Retired police officers, I get that. Regarding the question, clearly defining the roles of the department head, DCD head, and the board, I guess I find it a little troubling that we have to come to that, because again, I believe that there is an inherent relationship between DCD and the board already with the requirements of the department. It is to serve as, for lack of a better word, a secretarial function to the board, to do the research, to do the alternatives analysis, to synthesize the information, and to educate them on the issues. It is a position that does have influence, there's no question, but done right, it educates the decision makers, makes them well informed, and is a recipe for success when it comes to sound land use policy and regulation. So to me, it seems unnecessary with the right personnel, both in the DCD director position and also in the elected Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you. And so next, Kevin, you're up. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yes, please. It is a little bit lengthy.
It is a little long, so okay. The latest County Charter Review Commission made a recommendation that the Board of County Commissioners and the DCD director should work together to determine the authorities to be exercised between the two that are not delegated outright by an RCW or other aspects of the charter. Do you believe that this has been satisfactorily accomplished? And if not, what is your plan to accomplish it?
Thank you for doing that, Norma. I appreciate it.
90 seconds.
I think that the problem lies in the fact that we have not had communication between the two entities for a long time. And I'll go back to earlier statements that I made, getting together with the Board of Commissioners. What do they need? Where are the areas lacking? What are the areas of responsibility that they may not want to address and they'd like the DCD to address? Getting in there as DCD, what are areas that are gray areas? Where do we move? What is the best for both entities to work together to serve our community? We need to have that spirit of cooperation back. We need to work with those gentlemen. I've worked with the county commissioners since 2004 when I started on the Building Association board. Never had a problem in communication with them. They've always been very clear and concise, and I just look for that. And I think the charter giving direction, it's incumbent upon the two bodies to get together and work it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and so Cherie, you're up next. Do you want me to repeat the question? You're muted, Cherie. You need to unmute. There you are. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Sure.
Okay. This long-winded question. Okay. The latest County Charter Review Commission recommended that the Board of County Commissioners and the DCD director work together to determine the authorities to be exercised between the two that are not delegated outright by an RCW or some aspect of the charter. Do you believe this has been satisfactorily accomplished? And if not, what is your plan to accomplish it during your tenure? So you have
Okay.
90
Key-
seconds.
The key words here are work together. Since 2008, I have worked together on boards and commission with these county commissioners and have established excellent professional working relationships and communication, easy, regular communication. Now that is missing. And that's what's missing from the director of community development. And I will add that from day one. But I think this is a good idea because there's too many gray areas that apparently have caused some issues that have led to inefficiency in government working between the two. So I would love to explore discussing the authority between the two, but I have to respectfully disagree with Mr. Emery, who calls this a secretarial function between the director of community development and the board of commissioners, because it's the directorship is the leadership in our community, a leadership of a department, a leadership position that is on the same level of responsibility and authority as the county commissioners, just to advise them. It's not below them in a secretarial, it's the same level. And anything we can discuss and put in writing that will help us cooperate and understand our roles, let's talk about it.
Thank you. Okay, Jesse, same question. Do you want it read again?
I think I've got it.
Okay, you have 90
Okay.
seconds.
So I think that Charter Review Commission recommendation is really a statement that reflects the current situation between DCD and the Board of Commissioners. Communication's just not occurring. They're not sitting at the same table as each other and working together. That's what needs to happen. We need to elect someone who will work with the commissioners and will advise them so that they can make educated decisions on ordinances that they're approving. So as to whether, I think the question was, has this recommendation been followed? Has DCD and the BOCC met and determined who does what? No, that hasn't happened. They've tried, but they just cannot sit at the same table. I think as long as we have a strong working relationship with the board, we don't have to have those rigid lines of who does exactly what. We can work together and accomplish what we need to do as a community.
Thank you. So I think for the final question, there's a lot of confusion about this, the differentials in roles between the Board of Commissioners and the elected DCD. I think mainly because it is a unique position. So I'm going to run by one more question that may sound redundant, but it takes a little different tact. And Kevin, you'll be the first one to answer this. Currently, the DCD and the Planning Commission reviews permits and makes their decision within current roles. They then make a recommendation for an approval, a modification, or denial, which must then be approved by the Board of Commissioners. The commissioners are then allowed to make changes without having to submit any background reasoning for their proposed change. Please comment on this process, and would you work to change it, or is it okay as it is? So
Norma, would you be so kind as to repeat the first sentence, please?
sure. Yeah. Okay. Currently, the DCD and the Planning Commission work hard to review permits within current rules and then make a recommendation for an approval, a modification, or denial, which then must be approved by the Board of Commissioners. The commissioners are allowed to make changes without having to submit any background reasoning for their proposed change. Please comment on this process. Would you work to change it, or is it okay as it is?
Not sure that question is worded correctly. Permits. That, you know,
It was-
the building department, you go in and you submit paperwork for a building permit, if we're talking about that. And it is run through their process with planning. If there are issues around the permitting process and the functions of that, there's a permit advisory board, there's the planning commission, and the board of commissioners. So certainly the DCD is going to give recommendations, listen, obviously listen to the public. If I'm elected, I would like to have an open forum about every 6 weeks. I've said before in some of the other forums, using the board of commissioners office on a Friday afternoon and say, come on down, talk to the DCD and whoever else is needed, and let's find out what the issues are. But we need to find out what the issues are. And then when they're presented to the board of commissioners, they're the final arbiter. That's who runs the county. That I think there's confusion going around. I've had people approach me and say, can you change the zoning? Will you change this? Will you do that? No, that's not what the DCD can do. They can give input to the planning commission. They can give input to the board of commissioners, but the final decision is made by that board. And that is by virtue of the charter, and they're elected to run the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and so Cherie, you're up next. Do you want me to repeat this long wordy question? Okay, you're on mute, Cherie.
Yes, please.
Okay, currently the DCD and the Planning Commission review permits and within the current rules make a recommendation for approval, modification, or denial, which then must be approved by the Board of County Commissioners. When that presentation is done, the commissioners are allowed to make changes without having to submit any background reasoning for their proposed change. Please comment on this process. Would you work to change it, or is it okay as it is?
I approve of the process the way it is. It's set up to be efficient and it's set up to have the final decision by the Board of Commissioners, and that's fine. As the Director of Community Development, my job working with the Planning Commission and the staff of planners and in the Community Development Department is to put together the facts, the presentation to the commissioners so that they can understand and read our reports and the facts so they can make competent decisions. I don't need to take away the authority of the Board of Commissioners. I want to work with them competently and professionally so that they will trust the reports that come out of DCD that they can look at. And when we make a favorable recommendation, I feel that they will take that very, very seriously. Their job is further oversight, and their job is to ask questions, and their job is to make decisions. I like the way it's set up. And when I do my job properly with just a first-class staff of planners, and then when we present the appropriate recommendations, favorably or unfavorably, they will respect our professional opinion and act accordingly. But right now, the way it works sure works for me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and Jesse, you're next. Do you want the question read again?
I've got it.
Okay, 90 seconds.
So the DCD makes recommendations to the Planning Commission as to ordinances that should move forward, rezones, for example. And then the Planning Commission will then work with DCD to develop an ordinance that they approve of, and then make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners who make the final decision. The Planning Commission is an advisory board that makes recommendations to the commissioners. And sometimes the commissioners like those recommendations, sometimes they don't. And they may send staff back to work on whatever it was that was brought forward, or may just change it there and approve it. the commissioners were elected to as our legislative body, and it is their role to write and approve the laws. So I think this system works as it was designed to, and it gives the public plenty of opportunity to weigh in throughout the entire process. But at the end of the day, the commissioners were elected to approve the laws.
Okay, thank you. And so Bruce, you're next. Do you want the question read again?
That won't be necessary.
Okay, you have 90 seconds.
All right, thank you for that question. It is a little bit, I hate to say it this way, but it's a little bit flawed because it used the word permit. And of course, permits are either issued by the department itself or they go to the hearing examiner and the board is not involved. But as Jesse pointed out, if it's a regulation or a land use policy matter, that does go to the Planning Commission first for review and then public meeting to receive testimony. And then it is forwarded to the board who under normal circumstances would also hold at least one public hearing to receive testimony. It is within the board's purview as elected officials for this purpose under our charter to adopt regulation and policy as they deem fit. One characteristic of that decision-making, though, is they are required to have findings of fact and conclusions of law. So if they do deviate from, say, a recommendation of the Planning Commission, they usually instruct Planning Division staff to make changes to the findings and conclusions to reflect their frame of thought in promulgating that policy or regulation. So it's a process that is technical in its nature, but it is proper, especially if you have a public process where people have been able to comment. It is within the board's purview, and rightly so, to make the final decision.
Thank you. Okay, we're looking at the time. You're each going to make a summary comment of 2 minutes each. If you'd like, I can give you one quick question and reduce the time to 1 minute to answer. And it's kind of an issue that some of you have alluded to. And it would be that we've heard currently the Director of Community Development has a strained relationship with other county departments. What are your plans for developing positive relationships with other departments? Do you want to entertain that question for 1 minute each? Okay, all right. So let's see, we end up with Bruce. So now we're going to start with, I got to get my confused list here. Let's see, we had, so we're going to start with Cherie as first. So your time will be 1 minute.
That's my strength, my cooperation and collaboration relationships. I already have established them with the county commissioners. The Board of Commissioners and I have worked together for 12 years. I already have that established. I have established a great working relationship with the Sheriff's Department. That's what I do. That's my strong suit. So I'm looking forward on day one, January 1st, going in and reestablishing the communication, opening the communication between the Department of Community Development, the Board of Commissioners, and the public. I want public input. But yes, I have wonderful relationships. I will be of high value, and my relationships is what is missing in the current Department of Community Development. I'm going to bring in that cooperation and collaboration. I've got it. I'll use it for the community. Thank you.
Okay, and so Jesse, you're next.
All right, so I already have positive relationships with all three of our commissioners and with many of the department heads throughout the county. As I mentioned before, I have the endorsement of the sheriff. So I already have a strong relationship with the sheriff's office and with the staff in the health department. I've worked with all of our department heads when I was a reporter. And I frequently worked with our county commissioners as a reporter. Even when I was writing things they probably didn't want me to, we maintained a professional relationship that it still continues. I relied on those relationships that I had built as a reporter when I was doing code enforcement. And that allowed me to build relationships between the different departments, even when we did have this strained relationship with our department head. That while that made things difficult, I was still able to work with other departments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and so now Bruce, you're next.
Well, getting along with people is not, it's not a problem. You just have to keep focused on the goal. And one of the things that I've done in the private sector for my company is I'm the liaison for homeowners associations that we belong to. And I've served on 7 boards of directors. And as a developer representing on a homeowners association, that to me is the epitome of the definition of a heated political situation. There's often a lot of suspicion that goes along with it, but I have often turned those situations into very productive working relationships, developing trusting relationships. They know my honesty, they know my integrity, and they know that I'm mutually committed to finding workable solutions for all parties. Not easy to do. So that would be no different than in this case. The board, again, has the purview to make their own decisions. It's DCD's job to assist them in getting there.
Thank you. Okay, and Kevin.
Thank you. Well, it's very simple. I'm like you hear from the other candidates. I also enjoy a very robust, open relationship with the commissioners, worked with them on many issues. They've called upon the building association, in which I've been president twice, our local building association, for assistance and input. And I would just continue that same great relationship, the same great relationship I have with other department heads that I've worked with in different areas, as well as if people are interested in endorsements. I got the endorsement of Representative Mike Chapman, who in discussions, as we talk about going forward, he looks forward to, if I'm fortunate to be elected, to use my great relationships down in Olympia. So I'm really looking forward to getting in and reestablishing a great working communication, and then working with our reps and our state senator. Thank you.
Thank you. We're now into the wrap up, and I know that originally we told you could have 2 minutes for wrap up, but we gave you a couple extra questions. So if it's okay with all of you, we'll cut you back to a 90-second wrap up. Is that okay? All right, so we're going to do reverse order. And so Bruce Emery, you have 90 seconds to give us a summary comment.
Okay, first of all, thank you for this opportunity. The director of DCD is a highly technical position requiring a range of professional experience and expertise. It is not a figurehead position. It is responsible for doing the heavy lifting of research, legal analysis, synthesis, and drafting of alternatives. The director is also responsible for educating officials on policy and regulatory matters. Having an anecdotal understanding of how the department works, having advocated for an interest group on the county or state level, or having been an appointed or elected official is no substitute for several years of hands-on experience doing the same work that the new director will oversee. Having worked under 4 directors of this department, I am the only candidate with this range of experience, and I am fully qualified for this role. In addition to my work at the department, I have 15 years experience in the private sector, giving me a keen insight into the impact local jurisdictions have on the development community and the community at large. My private sector work has included service on 7 boards of directors with a track record of turning hostile situations into productive working relationships. I have the right experience, skills, and character to lead the department with fairness and compassion, to lead and manage departmental staff, and to work effectively and with fairness to serve the citizens of this county. I am ready to lead on day 1, and that is why I am asking for your vote.
Thank you. Jesse,
Thank you.
a wrap up for 90 seconds.
Sure. So first, I want to touch on code enforcement again a little bit. So it was said that some of my opponents would like to reestablish a junk vehicle program and reestablish programs that help people remove their solid waste. I just want to make it clear that those programs exist today. We have an abatement fund that we use, that the county uses to clear out garbage from properties when it will benefit the entire community. There's also an established junk vehicle program. If you call 565-2677, the code enforcement office, you will get a junk vehicle affidavit, and one of the scrappers in the area will come and get the vehicle for you for free. That exists. And then it was also said that I have minimal experience working in code enforcement. And I would like to thank Kevin for his many years of service in law enforcement. I think that's valuable. But I found success when I was working in code enforcement, and the proof of that is I earned the endorsement of the sheriff. The sheriff believes that I can tackle these issues that we're facing. So with my time running out, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is on my website, jessiemajor.com. Thank you for this opportunity. And again, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Cherie, you're next for 90 seconds wrap up.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for another excellent debate forum. I appreciate being here. I have been before you many times, the League of Women Voters, because I've run for office, I've served our community. Experience leadership matters. When I was served on the Port Angeles Planning Commission, that's entirely experience in land use decision-making, zoning, development, setting policy, working with the planners and working with the city council and making advisory decisions sent to the city council. And then 3 terms on the city council where you're working with those issues and you're making decisions that affect our community. I promote public outreach and engagement. That's missing. You don't see the DCD out there in the community. That's my strong suit. That's where I am. I have an elected to elected official relationship with all the 3 county commissioners. That's essential. I have a good working relationship. And this is a director position. It is a secretarial position. It's a director position. It's not a staff position. I'm not running for planner of Clallam County. I'm running for director of community development. It's a community leadership position, and we have an excellent staff. And I have an experience of getting results in this community, building this community, and I'll continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Kevin, a 90-second wrap up.
Thank you very much, Norma, and thanks to the league. This is not a popularity contest. This is a job interview with the citizens of Clallam County, and we entrust the citizens to vote wisely. Your vote is earned, it is not given. So I trust the citizens of our community to look at the depth and breadth of all 4 of us and see who has the experience to lead this department. We're going to have change coming up. My law enforcement career, I went through several major disasters, the earthquakes, the fires, the riots. I've been involved in a lot of different changes. In business, I've been through an incredible amount of changes with the recession, where I successfully kept my companies going without any problem, kept citizens of Clallam County employed, and kept food on their table. I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of what our company has accomplished and what our team has done. I run businesses large and small. I've managed large budgets. I've managed small budgets. I've managed people, large numbers of people successfully. I'm very proud of my accomplishments. So I'm going to leave it up to you, the voters of Clallam County, to make the best decision. And I thank you for your time and your consideration. I'm at kdr4dcd.com if you want more information. Good evening.
Well, that wraps up our forum. I want to give a profound thanks to the 4 candidates at multiple levels. Number 1, you guys were terrific about doing the time. Wow, we didn't have to stop anybody. But most of all, I thank all of you for stepping up and running for office, because that's what democracy is all about. is giving the voters a chance to make a choice. So the ballots we mailed out July 13th, and they have to be returned by August 2nd. You see that there's some information flashing on our screen here. So on behalf of the League of Women Voters, I thank you again for showing up and for running, and to the many participants. We had 52 participants in this forum and getting involved in local politics. I want to have a special thanks to the Olympic library system, and a special thanks for the technical skills of Bonnie and Sarah. So this will be available. You go to the League website, give us a couple days to get it posted, and you can share it with your friends or ask people who couldn't show up tonight. They have a chance to watch it. So we are now finished, and you can watch, those of you who missed it, watch the slideshow and learn more about 411 and other things the League does. Most of all, thank you all for coming. Special thanks again to the candidates and for the audience. And you'll, on your slides there, you'll show that there's some other League forums coming up. And remember that we have 4 candidates tonight. 2 will appear on the November ballot. So we stand adjourned. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.